Hey everybody, John here with the Esports Department, and we've got an interesting, kind of tricky one coming up tonight. It's a good night to have an interesting one after last night's very unfortunate Lan sub and Hong 46-point performance, or whatever he ended up putting up. I know that one really hurt a lot of people, me included. Generally speaking, if I'm running a heavy stack of a team, the jungler's super likely to be in there, so Lan killed a whole lot of my lineups. Definitely hurt me a fair bit last night, but hopefully we'll recover tonight with this kind of interesting slate. Let's start off with IG, who is minus 550. They are 5-3 on the season, and playing against BLG, who is plus 340 and 2-4 on the season. BLG has only played Meteor one time so far this season, and they won that series with a fairly convincing 2-0. So there is some argument to looking at Meteor or looking at BLG as a possible play here. Maybe with the new Meteor lineup is looking a little stronger. I gotta say their one win was against a kind of weak team, and IG before taking their last loss was looking pretty good for the season, and they put up a battle in their last series as well. They've really only lost to the other top tier teams in the LPL. I think IG's should be a reasonable favorite here. Let's look at the stats, and obviously the stats are going to be a little bit skewed since BLG's only played one series with Meteor so far. But it's what we've got. So, gold per minute, 18.15 for IG, 16.97 for BLG. Differential per minute, plus 120 for IG, minus 151 for BLG. First blood, first turret, 30.55 to 35.43, so kind of even there. Dragon control, 59 to 44. Gold differential at 15, plus 701 to minus 1035. So the stats all pointing towards EG here. One thing I really want to point out is that Fofo is like a real crux for BLG. He's like a really important player as far as the way that they're playing the game this season. And he's just going to get completely neutralized by Rookie, you have to think. Rookie didn't have a great series last series. If anything, he was probably the weakest link on the team in the last series. But it's still really hard to think that Rookie's not going to have the advantage in the 1v1 against Fofo. I'm not sure this is my night for BLG, and I'm a BLG truther in some senses. I like to play BLG in come-from-behind type situations where they're punching up. I think they have a style that can be good against some of the other LPL teams. I'm not sure this is the one where I'm going with BLG. Let's look at the kill per win and death per loss. You're looking at 31.3 as the total there, so 15.5 plus 0.2, 15.7 as an expectation for IG. Something to note, keep in mind that 15.7 total. BLG, on the other hand, if they are to pick up the win, they're looking at 34.4, so 17.2 expectation for BLG. That's a pretty good number. If you think BLG is going to win, I would get 4 of them in your lineup. I think they have a chance to put up a very good number against IG if they win the series. Keep in mind that 15 number for IG, though. Next, we have Victory 5 at minus 400, 6-2 on the season, up against LNG plus 270, 2-6 on the season. Looking at the stats, 18.30 in gold per minute to 16.56. Gold differential per minute is at plus 156 versus minus 182 for LNG. First blood, first turret. LNG with a 44.28, only a 30.50 for Victory 5, which is a little bit sketchy, but their gold per minute number is very good. Actually better than IG's so far this season, so definitely worth noting. Dragon percentage, 55 to 45. Gold differential at 15, plus 1,200 for V5, minus almost 1,200 for LNG. Not a good look. And looking down at the KPW and DPL, you're looking at 31.4, so 15.5 plus 0.2, 15.7. So 15.7 for Victory 5. If you went with LNG, they do have a pretty high kill per win this season at 19, but they're up against a 14.3 death per loss in Victory 5, and Victory 5 kind of being a team that has been one of the lower scoring teams in their victories. The last time they played, that was definitely not the case, but in general, over the course of this season, they haven't been a super high scoring team. I do think V5 is a vulnerable team. I think they're beatable. They do have a very good record. For the most part, when they've played bad teams this series, they've won 2-0. This season, they've won 2-0. That being said, I think they're vulnerable enough that LNG is at least a playable squad. Like, you could definitely put them in a lineup and feel all right about it. At the same time, Victory 5 should be a pretty heavy favorite in this matchup. I'm just not sure that I expect Victory 5 to score all that well either. We're looking at two 15.7 expectations there for Victory 5 and Invictus Gaming going into the LCK. So Dragon X minus 800, 6-0 on the season. KT plus 450, they are 2-4 on the season. Now KT's a little hard done by here. I think probably KT's a little bit better than their record suggests, but they're still not going to be on the level of Dragon X, who's been the best team in Korea so far this year. And that's all in the stats, 1912 to 1696, plus 256 to minus 99. Low first blood, first turret again for DRX, which is interesting because there's a few teams that are like this. And it seems like the teams that are willing to give up the first blood, first turret, maybe even first Drake, have been kind of successful in implementing strategies later, which is interesting because Dragon control percentage overall has been super indicative of a winning team. So the fact that people are giving up these first blood, first turret, maybe they're trading the Dragon for first blood, first turret. It's something that might be worth looking at. But you can see the Dragon control is 62 to 37, so huge advantage there. Gold differential at 15, it's plus 1739 to plus 104. Big advantage for Dragon X, as you'd expect. Now, kill per win for Dragon X versus the 16.6 DPL for KT. You're looking at 31.6. It's another 15.5 plus 0.3, 15.8. Just a slight edge to Dragon X versus the LPL teams when it comes to expected kills in the game. I will say you'd have to look up the numbers for sure. In fact, why don't we just do it live on the stream here? I'm guessing that the kill participation numbers for Dragon X are higher than most LPL teams. So let's have a look. This is the kind of stat I would usually like looking up when I'm trying to decide how to play, because when we look at an expectation like that, you also want to factor into account the kill participations. So you're looking at 70% from Carrier, 75 from Piosik, 71 from Deft, and 71.5 from Chovy. Doran, the only one that stands out on the low side at 57.6. Let's look at the LPL. Victory 5, 55, 68, a 71. You do have a 74 from Sam D and a 75 from Weiwei, so those guys are right in the wheelhouse of Dragon X. Mole not nearly on the same level. Bu a couple points behind. Let's look at Invictus. Invictus, a 67 out of the jungle, a 62 from the 80 carry, pretty darn low. 71.7 from Rookie, 67 for Southwind. He's not actually starting the series. It's going to be Reheal, who currently is on 100% kill participation, but that's 2 kills, so I don't think we take that too far. The Shy at 58.8 is actually ahead of anyone else that we've looked at so far. So just relevant to note there, the Shy might get a lot of shit because he's died a lot of times this season, but his kill participation is beating some of these other people we're looking at, and I'm guessing the number of kills that are actually him are significantly higher as well. However, he does have a 30.9% death percentage, which is pretty absurd. Just generally, yeah, pretty absurd. He is out CSing Rookie, which is kind of interesting. So that's just wanted to point out that even if these numbers are off, this is why the projections are so much more valuable than just looking at kill per win and death per loss. Because even if Invictus was, say, expected to get 1 additional kill versus Dragon X, probably Dragon X's kill participations make it so that their players would actually be worth more points even in a game with 1 less kill. Dragon X makes a reasonable play tonight. They are very expensive. If we look at salary, Deft right at 12,000 there, Chovy 11.4. Puff and Rookie are actually up in the same vicinity there. Sam D as well, I guess. So a lot of the favorites sitting right up there. Let's take a look at the last matchup real quick. Here you have Sandbox at minus 180. They are 1-5 on the season. Up against HLE at plus 130. They are 0-6 on the season. So a battle of the bottom of the table in the LCK here. Looking at the gold per minutes, 1634 to 1616, very close. Gold differential per minute, minus 258 to minus 280, also very close. First blood, first turret. First blood slightly higher for HLE. First turret significantly higher for Sandbox. Dragon control, 41 to 37. And negative 1871 to negative 1477, so that's HLE favored there. One thing I want to point out about this is Sandbox is kind of in a similar situation to BLG in the sense that they've only played 1 matchup with the roster with this current version of the roster with Yamato Cannon as the coach, like live in studio. I'm sure he was involved beforehand. But as far as actually being there and leading the team, they did win their first series with him live and in studio, and it was with playing against Dynamics, who had looked pretty good this season, although I do think they're kind of normalizing. This makes for an interesting series to me because it does have a lower expectation. You're looking at 29.5, so 14.5, 15 expectation, a little bit lower than what you're getting out of the other series. But with Yamato back and the pricing on Sandbox, if you look at, like, for instance, top lane. I got to get rid of all these people that aren't going to play. Let me switch this over to my pool real quick. If you look at the pricing, Sandbox, for the most part, is pretty cheap. 6,000 on Summit. So many people that aren't playing that are in the pool. At least not playing that we know of. In the jungle, on Fleek at 6,600. We can't say for sure that he's starting, but Fate is quite cheap at 7,200. He's my guess as who's starting. He wasn't playing last series when they won, so 7,400 on Root. So pretty cheap, and only expecting one less kill per game so far, with Yamato Cannon now having some time with the team. Yamato Cannon's Vitality teams were, for the most part, pretty bloody squads. And I think that he will recognize that part of his advantage playing in Korea is the fact that he's willing to play kind of out of the box and more aggressive things. I think Sandbox is my play as far as kind of like an underdog or a cheaper team that you can fit in. There's another thing that I really like about Sandbox tonight, which is that they play the 5 a.m. game, or 5 a.m. my time, which means their lineups are not going to be released on time, which is a bad thing in general, but it's a good thing when you're talking about ownership. A lot of people are willing to look away from a game if they're not going to get lineups for it. And I think the Sandbox lineup is at least reasonably fixed from what we've seen. I mean, they won their last series. Generally speaking, if a team that had not won a series all year won their last series, I don't know why they would come out with a different lineup here. It could happen, don't get me wrong. It's a risk playing them. But I think you can be somewhat certain that they're going to come out with the same lineup that they brought last time. And they feel like a pretty good play to me at only slightly less expectation and a lot cheaper. I think there's a lot of value to be found in Sandbox. Looking at possible ownerships for tonight, we got IG and BLG and HLE and Sandbox and DRX and KT and V5 versus LNG. So, lowest owned team. I think this is like a 3-horse race between Sandbox, HLE, and KT. KT, I think people will recognize, probably has some legitimate shot in this DRX matchup, and it makes me feel like people might actually play a little bit of KT. I don't think they're going to be anywhere near as highly owned as some of these other teams, but I'm going to start from the top on this one. The highest owned team I would expect to be Victory 5. I would follow that with DRX and IG. And then I think you're probably going to see an underdog here, probably BLG, followed by either Sandbox or HLE. I'm not sure which direction people will go on that matchup in general. Let's assume that they're kind of on the same line as me and they like Sandbox. Then you probably see LNG next, and then KT, and then HLE. That would be my guess. It's possible that Sandbox and HLE are flipped. Only one of these teams will have slightly elevated ownership, in my opinion. I think the other one will be extremely low owned. And that could be Sandbox, and it might be HLE. If people think that HLE is the only underdog that's going to win tonight, they might pile them in there to get better stacks with Victory 5 or IG or Dragon X. But I definitely think they'll be in the bottom 4, both of those teams. I think BLG is a team. IG has looked weak enough to enough people that BLG seems like the go-to underdog for tonight that a lot of people will be involved with. I'm thinking about maybe fading off of BLG a little bit because of that, even though I do think they're probably one of the more legitimate underdogs. I think I kind of like Sandbox, and I think even LNG has a shot to take down Victory 5. You could even play KT against Dragon X, and I wouldn't hate you for it. So I think the better leverage plays tonight go down in this vicinity right here. In general, those 4 teams I think will give you the better leverage. Let's look at where the scoring is coming from tonight. Looking at the favorites. Sandbox actually at the top of the list against HLE. The Shy coming second, Summit was first, Doran third, and Bubu actually projecting the lowest from Victory 5 there. An important note with Victory 5 as well, coming into the season, I kind of said that I thought Victory 5's numbers might be inflated because they only won 1 game last season. It was very bloody, and we are using last season's data as part of what we're doing. So that means it's possible that their numbers are still even just very slightly inflated, and if they're even very slightly inflated at 70.9 expectation, that seems like a pretty good fade. Going over to the jungle, it's Victory 5, followed by Sandbox, then Dragon X, IG sitting at the bottom in the jungle, Victory 5 at the top, so way significantly outperforming. Going to the mid lane, it's Rookie, then Chovy, Sandbox third there, and Mole in fourth. Victory 5's mid laner had a very good series last series and won a lot of people a lot of money, but in general has not been a high scorer this season. At AD carry, it's Sam D, so back to Victory 5, and then IG. Root from Sandbox showing the lowest there. His team does not rely on him nearly as much as many teams rely on their AD carry, so it's not surprising to see him at the bottom of the projections for AD carry. At support, it's Carria from Dragon X that's actually projected the highest, just by 0.1 points over Reheal, who also projects pretty well. PP God coming in third, and Gorilla from Sandbox coming in last. LCK support's not my favorite for LCK players. Much prefer the mid laners and the AD carries from the LCK. Their teams tend to fight more often in the mid game when the teams are actually grouped, and in those situations it's easier for the carries to get kills. Whereas when you're doing like ganks in lanes, it's much easier for the junglers to get kills, or early in the laning phase it's easier for the supports to get kills if it's a bot lane fight. That doesn't happen as much in the LCK, so I think I prefer in general to try to stay away from LCK junglers and supports if I can help it, and try to get the LPL for those. There's a little bit more early fighting in those leagues. Looking at the underdogs, if they win, LNG's projecting very well, BLG in second, the LCK teams towards the bottom there. Meteor projecting very well if he wins, tied with CAD actually from HLE, which is interesting. LNG in third, and KT coming last. In the mid lane, LNG, BLG with the LCK teams at the bottom. Same again here, the underdogs from the LPL projecting a little bit better than the LCK ones. And Lehen's actually at the very top of the list when it comes to supports. I did notice that Lehen's is more expensive than Gorilla. I think he's the only player on, let me just double check my memory here. Yeah, he's the only player on HLE that's more expensive than their Sandbox counterpart, and that's because of things like his kill participation. So interesting there. Looking at possible cash lineups for tonight. Oh, I should not have excluded all those people. That was a mistake. Wandy, Lehen's, Zimo. Crap. Tucson, yeah, duh. Okay, putting all the teams back in to then have a look at cash lineups. Sandbox only minus 180, Dragon X minus 800, very safe there. Victory 5 minus 400, and IG is minus 550. So if you're going just purely by odds, it would be Invictus and Dragon X that you'd want to get involved with. Those two can fit. You can get 4 IG with a support captain, 569.6 as a possibility there. What if we switched over to Victory 5 and Invictus? It is now a jungle captain, which is nice for 2 favorites like that. It's a Ning captain, and it projects at 580 even, so significantly better projection there. If you go with Victory 5 and Dragon X, you're looking at 566, which is the lowest that we've seen. So the highest projected lineup that you can get involves leaving Dragon X out and taking IG and Victory 5 to get 580. If you think both of those teams are going to win, I think that's a very legitimate decision. I do think both those teams are going to win. So I would either go that way or I would step down to IG and Dragon X at the 569.6 mark. Those seem like the two best cash lineups to me. Not a ton else to note on this slate. I think I'm probably going to find myself heavier involved with Sandbox, not as involved with Dragon X as the field. Maybe overly involved with IG and under-involved with Victory 5. I kind of think there is some chance that LNG comes out and gets an upset there. I don't think it's super likely, but I think I'd rather focus on IG and Sandbox as kind of my two favorite teams on this slate. So that's all for me, guys. Let me know if there's any other questions you have, and I will talk to everybody later. Always hit me up on the Discord or Twitter or anything like that if you have any further questions. I'll talk to you later, guys.